The screaming cut through the polished silence of Henderson's fine goods like a siren. Jasmine Holloway was on her knees scrubbing the marble floor near the men's suiting section when she heard it. A child's cry, but not the ordinary tantrum kind. This was different. Raw, desperate, the sound of a nervous system in complete overload. She dropped her cleaning rag and moved toward the sound, her uniform stark against the gleaming white floors and designer displays. Around the corner in aisle 7, she found him, a little boy, maybe 5 years old, in a green shirt, sitting rigid on the floor with his hands clamped over his ears. His eyes were squeezed shut, tears streaming down his flushed cheeks, his whole body trembling. Around him, wealthy shoppers in designer clothes stopped and stared. Some whispered to each other. Others looked away quickly, uncomfortable. One woman in pearls muttered loud enough for Jasmine to hear. "Where are his parents? Someone needs to control that child." But Jasmine knew exactly what was happening. Her younger sister had nonverbal autism, and Jasmine had learned the language of a meltdown since she was 10 years old. Behind the boy stood a man in an expensive tuxedo, his face pale with panic, his hands hovering uselessly near his son, but clearly afraid to touch him. He was trying to speak, but his voice only seemed to make things worse. "Rowan, please. Rowan, we need to go. Son, please calm down." The overhead lights blazed. Ambient music pulsed through hidden speakers. The decorative water feature nearby trickled and echoed. A digital advertising screen flashed promotional videos every 3 seconds. Sensory hell. Jasmine didn't think. She acted. She strode past the gawking customers and reached for the control panel mounted near the display column, the one employees weren't supposed to touch except for emergencies. She disabled the advertising screen with one switch, hit another to silence the ambient music. Then she moved to the decorative fountain and twisted the valve until the water stopped flowing. The sudden quiet was startling. Several customers gasped. The man in the tuxedo stared at her, stunned. Jasmine knelt down several feet away from the boy, careful not to invade his space, and pulled something from her cleaning cart. A small red toy car she kept for her sister's visits. She set it on the floor where the boy could see it, then spoke in a low, rhythmic voice. "Hi, sweetheart. My name is Jasmine." "I think everything got too loud and too bright just now, didn't it?" The boy's rocking slowed slightly. His hands were still pressed over his ears, but his breathing shifted. "I'm not going to touch you," Jasmine continued softly. "I just made it quieter. See this car? It's really smooth. If you want, you can hold it. It might help." Slowly, the boy's eyes opened. He stared at the red car. Then, tentatively, one small hand reached out and picked it up. He began rolling it back and forth on the floor, the repetitive motion visibly calming him. "That's it," Jasmine murmured. "You're doing so well. Can you take a deep breath with me? In through your nose." The boy inhaled shakily. "And out through your mouth." He exhaled. "Perfect. You're safe. You're okay." Welcome back, everyone. Before we continue, where are you watching from, and what time is it over there? Drop your location in the comments. I love seeing our global community. And if you believe compassion should come before corporate policy, hit that subscribe button right now. For the next 3 minutes, Jasmine stayed kneeled on the marble floor, guiding the boy, Rowan, through grounding techniques. She had him name things he could see, things he could touch. His breathing steadied, his hands stopped shaking. The red car rolled back and forth, a lifeline. The man in the tuxedo watched with an expression Jasmine couldn't quite read. Gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. Shame, maybe. Recognition that his wealth and power meant nothing in the face of his son's distress. That this woman in an orange cleaning uniform knew exactly what his son needed when he did not. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. God, thank you. I didn't know what to do. He's autistic, and sometimes when it's too much, I understand," Jasmine said gently, still focused on Rowan. My sister's the same way. Rowan's breathing was almost normal now. He looked up at Jasmine with wide, uncertain eyes, still clutching the toy car. You did such a good job calming yourself down, Jasmine told him. I'm really proud of you. The man crouched down beside them, tears in his eyes. Rowan, buddy, are you okay? Rowan nodded silently, then held up the red car as if to show his father. I see it, the man said softly. That's a nice car. Excuse me, excuse me. The voice was sharp, furious, cutting through the moment like a blade. Jasmine looked up to see Cynthia Albright, the floor manager, storming toward them. Her face was flushed red with anger, her expensive heels clicking aggressively against the marble. Jasmine Holloway, Cynthia snapped. What do you think you're doing? Jasmine rose slowly to her feet, keeping her voice calm. The child was having a sensory overload. I was helping. You disrupted the entire floor, Cynthia hissed. You turned off the ambient systems. You touched customer-facing technology. You abandoned your cleaning duties. You interacted with clients without authorization. Ms. Albright, the man in the tuxedo interrupted, his voice tight. This woman just helped my son. I don't care if she helped the president's son. Cynthia cut him off coldly, though her eyes flickered with recognition as she looked at him more closely. She violated store protocol. Henderson's Fine Goods is a luxury retail experience. Our staff does not disrupt the aesthetic. Our cleaning personnel does not engage with clientele. She turned back to Jasmine, her expression venomous. You're fired, effective immediately. Clear out your locker and leave the premises. If you can't stand managers like Cynthia, who value policy over humanity, comment, compassion over compliance, right now. Let's flood this comment section with people who actually have a heart. The words hit Jasmine like a physical blow. She'd been working at Henderson's for 2 years, barely scraping by, sending money home to help care for her sister, living paycheck to paycheck. She needed this job. But looking down at Rowan, who was now calm and holding the red toy car like it was precious, Jasmine couldn't bring herself to regret what she'd done. I understand, Jasmine said quietly, her voice steady even as her world collapsed. I'll get my things. Wait, the man started, his voice sharp with outrage. But Jasmine was already walking away, head held high, past the staring customers, past the marble columns and designer displays, toward the service corridor that led to the employee break room. She didn't look back. Behind her, she heard the man's voice rise in anger. Do you have any idea who I am? Do you have any idea what you just... But Cynthia's clipped response faded as Jasmine pushed through the service door. 10 minutes later, Jasmine walked through the employee exit into the parking lot, carrying a small cardboard box with her spare uniform, her water bottle, a photo of her sister, and the few personal items from her locker. She'd been fired for helping a child. The injustice of it burned in her chest, but beneath the anger was something else. Certainty that she'd done the right thing. Some rules were meant to be broken. Excuse me, miss. Wait, please. Jasmine turned to see the man from inside jogging toward her across the parking lot, still in his tuxedo, slightly out of breath. Rowan was holding his hand, clutching the red toy car in his other hand. Please wait, the man said as he reached her. I need to talk to you. Jasmine set down her box. Sir, I appreciate your concern, but... My name is Graham Prescott, he interrupted. I'm the CEO of Prescott Global, and I just watched you get fired for saving my son. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. That's unconscionable. That manager. I'm going to make sure she never... He stopped himself, shaking his head. But that's not why I followed you. I followed you because I need to offer you a job. Jasmine stared at him. What? You helped my son when no one else would. You recognized immediately what he needed. You were patient, skilled, and effective. You knew exactly how to calm him when I, his own father, stood there helpless. His voice cracked slightly. Those are the exact qualities I need. Mr. Prescott, I clean floors. I don't have qualifications for— I'm not offering you a corporate position, Graham said firmly. I'm offering you a position as Rowan's full-time support specialist, someone who understands autism, someone who can help him navigate overwhelming situations, someone who can teach me how to be the father he actually needs instead of the one I've been trying to be. Jasmine looked down at Rowan, who was watching her with those same wide, uncertain eyes. She made it quiet, Daddy, Rowan said softly. It was the first time she'd heard him speak. She gave me the car. I know, buddy, Graham said gently. Then to Jasmine, full-time position, benefits, salary 5 times what you were making here. Your job would be to support Rowan, help him with coping strategies, advocate for his needs, and teach me and my household staff about autism so we can better support him. If you believe lived experience is just as valuable as credentials, smash that like button. Show the world that diplomas don't teach empathy. Life does. I'm not a certified therapist, Jasmine said. I don't have special education training. No, Graham agreed. But you have lived experience. Your sister is autistic. That means you understand things no amount of professional training can teach. And more importantly, his voice grew thick with emotion. You saw my son in distress, and you helped without hesitation. You lost your job for doing the right thing. That's the person I want supporting Rowan. Jasmine looked at Rowan again. The little boy smiled at her shyly and held up the red car. Can you keep it? He asked quietly. The car? For next time? Something in Jasmine's chest cracked open. She thought about her sister, about all the times she'd wished someone understood, about all the meltdowns in public places where people stared or judged or looked away, about how desperately she'd wanted to help more people like her sister, but never had the resources or opportunity. She thought about the job she'd just lost for 3 minutes of compassion, and she thought about the little boy standing in front of her, who needed someone who just got it. Okay, Jasmine said, her voice steady. Yes. I'll do it. Graham Prescott's face flooded with relief. Thank you. God, thank you. Can you start Monday? I'll have my HR director contact you today with all the details, contract, salary, benefits, everything. He extended his hand, and Jasmine shook it. But Ms. Holloway, Jasmine, Graham added, his voice serious. I need you to know something. You didn't just calm my son down today. You showed me that I've been failing him. I've hired specialists and therapists and spent a fortune on treatments. And none of them could do in an hour what you did in 3 minutes. That's not because they're incompetent. It's because you understand. And that understanding is worth more than any credential. He paused, then added quietly, You got fired for doing the right thing. I'm going to spend every day making sure you never regret it. The afternoon sun hit Jasmine's face as she pushed through the employee exit, the cardboard box heavy in her arms. Inside were the fragments of 2 years of her life, a spare uniform she'd never wear again, her water bottle with the chipped rim, the framed photo of her sister Keisha smiling at the camera with her weighted blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Jasmine had been sending half her paycheck home every month to help with Keisha's care. Now that paycheck was gone. She walked across the parking lot with her head high, refusing to let the tears come. Not here. Not where security cameras might catch her breaking down. She'd cry later, alone in her efficiency apartment, after she'd updated her resume and started the humiliating process of job hunting again. Excuse me, miss. Wait, please. The voice was breathless, urgent. Jasmine turned to see Graham Prescott jogging toward her across the asphalt, his tuxedo jacket flapping, one hand gripping Rowan's small fingers. The boy was still clutching the red toy car like a talisman. Jasmine set down her box and waited, unsure what more there was to say. An apology wouldn't pay her rent. Sympathy wouldn't cover Keisha's therapy costs. Graham reached her and stopped, slightly winded. Up close, she could see the tear tracks on his face. The raw emotion he hadn't bothered to hide. This wasn't the composed billionaire from the society pages. This was a father who'd just watched his son suffer while he stood by, helpless. "Please wait," he said. "I need to talk to you." "Mr. Prescott, I appreciate your concern, but there's nothing—" "My name is Graham Prescott. I'm the CEO of Prescott Global." He said it without arrogance, just stating a fact. "And I just watched you get fired for saving my son." Jasmine felt something twist in her chest. "It's not your fault." "It absolutely is," Graham interrupted, his voice sharp with fury. "That manager, Cynthia Albright, I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what she's done. I'll have my lawyers review every policy she cited. I'll speak to the store's ownership. What happened to you was unconscionable." "That won't get me my job back," Jasmine said quietly. "I know." Graham's expression shifted, became more intent. "That's why I'm here. I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to offer you a job. If you're rooting for Jasmine right now, turn on those post notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, this gets even better." Jasmine stared at him. "What?" "You helped my son when no one else would. You recognized immediately what he needed. Recognized it faster than I did, and I'm his father." His voice cracked on the last word. "You were patient, skilled, effective. You knew exactly how to calm him when I stood there like an idiot, making everything worse with my panic." Rowan tugged on his father's hand. "She made it quiet, Daddy." "I know, buddy." Graham squeezed his son's hand, then looked back at Jasmine. "I've hired specialists, therapists, behavioral consultants. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to help Rowan navigate a world that overwhelms him, and none of them, not one, could do what you did in 3 minutes. Mr. Prescott, I'm offering you a position as Rowan's full-time support specialist," Graham continued. "Your job would be to help him with coping strategies, advocate for his needs, support him through difficult situations, and teach me how to be the father he actually needs instead of the one I've been trying to be." Jasmine opened her mouth to protest, but he pressed on. "Full-time position, health benefits, dental, vision, salary 5 times what you were making at Henderson's. You'd work directly with Rowan, but also consult with our household staff, his teachers, anyone in his life who needs to understand how to support him better. 5 times her salary." Jasmine's mind raced through the math. She could pay off her mother's medical debt, cover Keisha's therapy without her mom having to choose between treatments and groceries, maybe even save something for the future. "I don't have credentials," Jasmine said, though her resistance was weakening. "I'm not a certified therapist or special education teacher." "No," Graham agreed. "But you have lived experience. Your sister is autistic, you said. That means you understand things no certification can teach. You understand sensory overload. You understand meltdowns. You understand that autism isn't misbehavior or a problem to fix. It's a different way of experiencing the world that requires accommodation and understanding." He paused, his voice growing softer. "Rowan's mother died when he was 18 months old. I've been raising him alone, trying to be enough for him, and I'm failing. I didn't even realize how badly I was failing until I watched you help him today." Jasmine looked down at Rowan, who was watching her with those wide, serious eyes. He held up the red car. "Can you keep it?" he asked quietly. "For next time I get scared?" Something in Jasmine's chest cracked open. She thought about Keisha, about all the times she'd wished someone understood, about all the public meltdowns where strangers stared with judgment instead of compassion, about how desperately she'd wanted to do more than just survive, paycheck to paycheck, cleaning floors while her real talents went to waste. She thought about the manager who'd fired her for 3 minutes of kindness. And she thought about the little boy in front of her who needed someone who just got it. "Okay," Jasmine said, her voice steady. "Yes, I'll take the job. Graham's entire body sagged with relief. Thank you. God, thank you. Can you start Monday? Monday's fine. I'll have my HR director contact you today with all the details. Contract, salary, benefits, everything. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. That's my direct line. Call me if you have any questions before then. Jasmine took the card, still somewhat dazed. Graham's expression grew serious. Ms. Holloway, Jasmine, I need you to know something. You got fired today for doing the right thing, for choosing a child's well-being over store policy. That kind of integrity is rare, and it cost you something real. He paused. I'm going to spend every day making sure you never regret that choice. Comment, she deserves this, if you're crying happy tears right now. And if you believe good people deserve good things, share this story. Someone in your life needs to see it today. The Prescott estate sat behind iron gates in the wealthiest neighborhood Jasmine had ever seen. On Monday morning, she gave her name to the security guard, who checked his tablet twice before waving her through. The driveway curved through manicured grounds for what felt like a quarter-mile before the house came into view. A sprawling modern structure of glass and steel that looked more like a museum than a home. Jasmine parked her 15-year-old Honda between a Mercedes and a Tesla, feeling suddenly conscious of the rust spots on her bumper. She'd dressed carefully in simple black slacks and a blue blouse, professional but not pretentious, and carried a tote bag with books about autism, sensory processing, and communication strategies she'd collected over years of helping Keisha. A woman in a severe gray suit met her at the door. She was tall, white, perhaps 50, with hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and glasses that caught the light like shields. Ms. Holloway, I'm Beverly Wealth, Director of Human Resources for Prescott Global and the Prescott household. Her handshake was brief, clinical. Mr. Prescott has asked me to facilitate your onboarding. Thank you for meeting with me, Jasmine said. Beverly's smile didn't reach her eyes. Yes, well, this is certainly an unconventional hiring situation. Mr. Prescott was quite insistent, despite my recommendations, that we conduct a more thorough vetting process. She turned and walked into the house, her heels clicking on marble floors. I've prepared your contract, tax documents, and confidentiality agreements. We'll review those first. Jasmine followed her through a foyer with ceilings 2 stories high, past rooms that seemed designed for looking at rather than living in. Everything was white, chrome, glass, beautiful and cold, and echo-prone. They entered an office where Beverly had documents arranged in neat stacks. For the next 30 minutes, Beverly walked Jasmine through paperwork with barely concealed skepticism. Your employment history shows 2 years at Henderson's Fine Goods and Housekeeping. Before that, various retail and service positions. No formal education beyond high school. No certifications in childcare, therapy, or special education. That's correct, Jasmine said evenly. Mr. Prescott is paying you quite generously for someone with your qualifications, or rather, lack thereof. Beverly's tone was polite but pointed. I trust you understand the responsibility you're accepting. Rowan is a vulnerable child with complex needs. I understand that, Jasmine replied, meeting her gaze. My sister is autistic. I've been supporting her since I was 10 years old. Lived experience is not the same as professional training. No, it's not, Jasmine agreed. But sometimes it's more valuable. If you can't stand people like Beverly, who measure worth by credentials instead of character, drop a "respect earned, not learned" in the comments. Let's show her what real value looks like. Beverly's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or irritation that Jasmine wasn't intimidated. Before she could respond, the office door opened and Graham entered with Rowan holding his hand. Jasmine. Graham's face relaxed into genuine warmth. I'm so glad you're here. Beverly, thank you for handling the paperwork. I'll take Jasmine upstairs to see Rowan's space. Beverly stood, her professional mask firmly in place. "Of course, Mr. Prescott. Ms. Holloway, welcome to the household. I'm sure we'll be in touch." Graham led Jasmine through the house, Rowan walking between them, silent but curious. "Don't mind Beverly," Graham said quietly. "She's protective of the family and skeptical of anyone she hasn't personally vetted for 6 months." "She thinks you made a mistake hiring me," Jasmine observed. "She thinks I'm making a lot of mistakes." Graham's voice carried a thread of exhaustion. "She's probably right about most of them." They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor and walked down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Jasmine's car. Graham stopped at a door and opened it carefully. "This is Rowan's room. I tried to make it autism-friendly, but I'm not sure I got it right." The room was enormous, easily 4 times the size of Jasmine's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows filled it with natural light. The furniture was expensive and minimal. A platform bed, a desk, built-in shelving. There were toys arranged neatly on the shelves, educational and wooden and untouched looking. The walls were painted pale gray. It was beautiful. It was also completely wrong. Jasmine walked slowly through the space, her trained eye cataloging problems. The windows had no blackout shades for controlling light. The overhead fixtures were harsh LEDs. The floor was hardwood, every footstep echoing. No soft textures, no weighted blankets, no quiet corner for regulation. The room felt like an architectural magazine spread, gorgeous and utterly unsuited for a child with sensory processing needs. "I've been working with Dr. Philip Marsh," Graham said, watching her assessment with growing unease. "He's a highly respected child psychologist specializing in autism. He helped design this space. He said minimalism reduces overstimulation." "For some autistic people, yes," Jasmine said carefully. "But minimalism isn't the same as sensory support. This room is beautiful, Mr. Prescott, but it's not calming. It's echoey. Bright, hard. There's nowhere for Rowan to retreat when he's overwhelmed." Graham's face fell. "I spent months working with Dr. Marsh on this. I thought I was finally doing something right." Rowan tugged his father's hand and pointed to a corner of the room where a single weighted blanket sat folded on a chair. "I like that blanket," he said quietly. "It's heavy." "See?" Jasmine knelt down to Rowan's level. "You already know what helps you feel safe. We just need more of it." Graham ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly lost. "Dr. Marsh has all the credentials, years of experience, published research. He's been working with Rowan for 8 months, and Rowan still has meltdowns 3 times a week. I don't understand what I'm doing wrong." "You're not doing anything wrong," Jasmine said gently. "You're trying to help. But sometimes the people with all the credentials don't get it the way people with lived experience do. Dr. Marsh probably knows autism theoretically. I know it practically, from living it with my sister every day." She looked around the room again, already seeing how it could be transformed. "Rowan doesn't need minimalism. He needs sensory tools, soft spaces, controllable lighting, and places to stim safely. He needs a room designed for his nervous system, not for a magazine." Graham stared at her for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "That's exactly what Beverly said you'd say. That you'd come in and contradict the expert." He paused. "She thinks I'm being foolish, hiring you on impulse." "Maybe you are," Jasmine said honestly. "No," Graham shook his head. "You calmed Rowan in 3 minutes when Dr. Billionaire. Marsh has been trying for 8 months. That's not impulse. That's recognizing someone who just gets it." He met her eyes. "So tell me, Jasmine, what does Rowan actually need?" The first week, Jasmine simply observed. She watched Rowan navigate his daily routines, noting what made his shoulders tense, when his hands started to flap, which sounds made him flinch. She saw him cover his ears when the kitchen blender ran. Saw him refuse to walk on the marble floors in bare feet. saw him line up his toy cars with precise, soothing repetition every morning. Dr. Philip Marsh arrived on Thursday for Rowan's scheduled session. He was in his 50s, impeccably dressed, carrying a leather briefcase and an air of professional authority. He set up in the study with flashcards and behavioral charts, trying to get Rowan to practice making eye contact and using full sentences. Jasmine watched from the doorway as Rowan grew increasingly agitated, his body rigid, his answers becoming monosyllabic. After 20 minutes, Dr. Marsh sighed and made a note on his tablet. "We're still working on social engagement," he told Graham afterward. Rowan needs to understand that eye contact is an important social skill. The repetitive behaviors with the toy cars need to be redirected toward more productive activities. I've designed a reward system to encourage appropriate responses. If you think forcing autistic kids to make eye contact is wrong, hit that like button twice. Once for yourself, and once for every child who's been told they're broken for being themselves. After he left, Jasmine found Rowan in his room, rocking with his weighted blanket, hands pressed over his ears, even though the house was quiet. She sat on the floor several feet away. "Dr. Marsh's sessions are hard, aren't they?" Rowan nodded without looking at her. "Can I tell you a secret? You don't have to look at people's eyes if it's uncomfortable. My sister Keisha doesn't either. She looks at foreheads or chins, and that's okay. Dr. Marsh says I have to. Dr. Marsh wants you to fit into a world that wasn't designed for you," Jasmine said gently. "But I'm here to help you navigate that world as yourself, not as someone you're pretending to be." Over the next 2 weeks, Jasmine transformed Rowan's room. She installed blackout curtains and adjustable lighting. She created a sensory corner with a crash pad, compression blankets, and fidget tools. She lined one wall with foam panels to dampen echoes. She asked Rowan what textures he liked and covered the floor near his bed with a soft rug. "Why do you ask me what I want?" Rowan asked one afternoon as they organized his new fidget collection. "Because you're the expert on you," Jasmine said. "I'm just here to help you understand what your body needs and give you tools to handle it." She started teaching him to identify his triggers. "When you start feeling overwhelmed, where do you feel it first? Your chest? Your head?" "My ears," Rowan said. "Everything gets too loud, even when it's not loud." "That's sensory overload. Let's find tools that help." They experimented with noise-canceling headphones, white noise, different music volumes. Rowan discovered that certain frequencies calmed him, while others made everything worse. Jasmine made him a visual chart, not for rewards like Dr. Marsh's system, but for identifying feelings. Green for calm, yellow for getting overwhelmed, red for meltdown territory. "When you're in yellow, you use your tools before you hit red," she explained. "There's no shame in yellow. Everyone has yellow days." Graham watched the transformation with something like wonder. One evening, he found Jasmine and Rowan on the floor of the sensory corner, Rowan explaining why he lined up his cars by color instead of size. "Dr. Marsh says it's obsessive behavior that needs correcting," Graham said quietly. "Dr. Marsh is wrong," Jasmine replied, not unkindly. "Rowan's organizing his world in a way that makes sense to him. It's not hurting anyone. It's actually a coping mechanism that helps him feel in control when everything else feels chaotic." She looked up at Graham. "Your son doesn't need to be fixed or trained to act neurotypical. He needs to be understood and given tools to manage a world that's genuinely overwhelming for him. There's a difference." Graham sat down beside them, watching his son's careful, precise movements with the toy cars. "Dr. Marsh has published papers. He's worked with hundreds of autistic children." "I'm sure he has," Jasmine said. "And I'm sure he's helped many of them. But Rowan doesn't need someone who studied autism. He needs someone who understands it from the inside, not as a disorder to manage, but as a different way of being that deserves respect." Rowan looked up at his father for the first time in the conversation. "Jasmine doesn't make me do the eye thing. She says Keisha looks at chins and that's okay. Graham's expression cracked. Is that okay? Really? It's more than okay, Jasmine said firmly. Forced eye contact is painful for many autistic people. Making him do it isn't teaching him social skills. It's teaching him to endure discomfort to make other people comfortable. Is that really what you want? Graham was quiet for a long moment, watching his son's relaxed posture, the ease in his movements that he rarely saw during Dr. Marsh's visits. No, he said finally. I want him to be happy. I want him to feel safe. Then let him line up his cars, Jasmine said. And trust that he knows himself better than any chart or behavioral system ever will. If you know someone who needs to hear this message, that they don't need to be fixed, share this video with them right now. You might just change their life. 6 months after Jasmine arrived, the Prescott household had transformed in ways that couldn't be measured in behavioral charts or professional assessments. It was visible in small moments. Rowan humming while he arranged his cars. Graham pausing before entering a room to give his son warning. The weighted blanket draped across the living room couch instead of hidden away. Graham stood in the doorway of Rowan's room one evening, watching Jasmine and his son sit together in the sensory corner. Rowan was flapping his hands rhythmically, a movement that used to fill Graham with panic. Dr. Sewell. Marsh had called it self-stimulatory behavior requiring intervention. Jasmine called it self-regulation that should be respected. That's proprioceptive input, Jasmine was explaining to Rowan. Your body needs that movement. It helps you process everything happening around you. It's not weird or wrong. It's your nervous system taking care of itself. Graham cleared his throat softly from the hallway, waiting. Jasmine had taught him that too. Never barge in, always announce yourself. Give Rowan time to transition his attention. Rowan looked up and waved, still flapping with his other hand. Hi, Daddy. We're talking about stimming. I can see that, Graham said, entering slowly. He sat on the floor beside them. Something he never would have done 6 months ago, when he believed keeping professional boundaries with his son somehow made him a better parent. Can I join you? Over the following weeks, Graham began implementing changes throughout the house. He replaced the harsh overhead lights with adjustable fixtures. He warned Rowan 10 minutes before any transition, leaving for school, going to dinner, visitors arriving. He stopped correcting the hand flapping and car lining and humming, recognizing them for what they were, Rowan's ways of staying regulated in an overwhelming world. The morning Beverly Wealth came to discuss household budgets. She found Graham sitting on the kitchen floor with Rowan, both of them organizing groceries by color before putting them away. Mr. Prescott, the quarterly reports. She stopped, staring. Can wait 15 minutes, Graham said without looking up. Rowan and I are finishing our system. Beverly's expression flickered with disapproval, but she waited. When Rowan finally headed upstairs with his noise-canceling headphones, Graham turned to her. I know you think I made a mistake hiring Jasmine. Sir, I never said... You didn't have to. Graham's voice was gentle but firm. But I need you to understand something. For 5 years, I've been trying to fix my son. Trying to make him fit into a world designed for neurotypical children. I hired the best therapists, followed every expert recommendation, spent a fortune on interventions, and Rowan was miserable. He glanced toward the stairs where his son had disappeared. Jasmine didn't teach Rowan to be different. She taught me to see that different isn't deficient. She showed me that accommodation isn't enabling, it's respecting who he actually is. Beverly was quiet for a moment. The meltdowns have decreased significantly. They've almost stopped, Graham corrected. Because now Rowan has tools to manage overwhelm before it becomes a crisis. Because we've removed unnecessary sensory assaults from his environment. Because he's not constantly being told that his natural responses are wrong. He met Beverly's eyes. You were right that I hired Jasmine on impulse. But you were wrong that it was a mistake. Comment, trust the process. If you believe the best decisions don't always come from the longest deliberations, sometimes you just know what's right. That evening, Graham found Jasmine in Rowan's room, updating his visual schedule for the following week. He sat in the reading chair, watching her work with practiced efficiency. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. Jasmine looked up, concerned. "Is everything okay?" "More than okay." Graham's voice caught slightly. 6 months ago, I watched you get fired for helping my son. I was so grateful, but I don't think I really understood what you were offering. I thought I was hiring someone to manage Rowan's autism." He paused. "But you didn't just help my son navigate the world. You taught me how to be his father. The father he actually needs, not the one I was trying to be." Jasmine smiled softly. "You were always his father, Graham. You just needed to learn his language." "I was forcing him to learn mine," Graham said, "making him endure discomfort so I didn't have to change." "That's not parenting. That's control." He looked toward the door where Rowan's laughter echoed from downstairs. "You showed me that accommodation isn't surrender, it's love." The email from Beverly Wealth arrived on a Tuesday morning, formal and carefully worded. "Ms. Holloway, Mr. Prescott has requested your presence at Thursday's executive leadership meeting to discuss potential neurodiversity initiatives within Prescott Global. Please confirm your attendance." Jasmine read it 3 times, certain she'd misunderstood. She was Rowan's support specialist, not a corporate consultant. She'd never set foot in a boardroom, never presented to executives. The closest she'd come to corporate leadership was scrubbing the floors beneath their meetings at Henderson's. "You're surprised," Graham said when she found him in his study that evening. Rowan was upstairs doing his bedtime routine, the predictable sequence that helped him transition to sleep. "Surprised is an understatement," Jasmine replied. "Graham, I don't know anything about corporate consulting." "You know about creating accessible environments for neurodivergent people?" Graham countered. "You transformed this household in 6 months. Rowan went from 3 meltdowns a week to maybe 1 a month. You taught an entire staff how to communicate with and support an autistic child." He leaned forward. "Prescott Global employs 8,000 people. How many of them do you think are neurodivergent and struggling in silence because our workplace wasn't designed for them?" Jasmine sat down slowly. "You want me to do for your company what I did for Rowan. I want you to help us stop losing brilliant employees because we're too ignorant to accommodate different neurologies." Graham pulled up a document on his tablet. "Last quarter, we lost 3 software engineers, all high performers, all citing cultural fit issues. I had HR do exit interviews. You know what they said? The open office plan was sensory hell. The fluorescent lighting gave them migraines. The expectation of constant video calls was exhausting. The mandatory team-building events felt like torture." He looked at her directly. "We're losing talent because we've built a workplace that only works for neurotypical people, and we don't even realize we're doing it. If you've ever felt like you don't fit at work because of sensory issues, social exhaustion, or different communication styles, comment, I've been there. Let's show how many brilliant people are struggling in silence." Thursday morning, Jasmine stood outside the executive conference room in a navy blazer she'd bought specifically for this meeting, her hands trembling slightly. Through the glass wall, she could see a dozen executives seated around a massive table, all impeccably dressed, all radiating the confidence of people accustomed to authority. Beverly Wealth approached from down the hallway, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Holloway, are you ready?" "Honestly, no." Something shifted in Beverly's face, not quite warmth, but perhaps respect. "For what it's worth, I was skeptical when Graham hired you. I thought it was impulsive, irresponsible even. I've since revised that assessment." She paused at the door. "You changed this household. These executives need to hear what you have to say, even if they don't want to." The presentation lasted 40 minutes. Jasmine spoke about sensory processing, about the exhaustion of masking, about how small accommodations could dramatically improve productivity and retention. She showed them the data: studies on neurodivergent employees, statistics on untapped talent, research on workplace accessibility. But more than data, she told stories. She talked about Keisha, about Rowan, about what it felt like to navigate a world designed without you in mind. She described the constant calculations neurodivergent people made just to survive an 8-hour workday, the mental energy spent suppressing stims, forcing eye contact, translating social cues, enduring sensory assaults that neurotypical colleagues didn't even notice. You're not just losing employees, Jasmine concluded. You're losing their potential, because they're spending half their energy just trying to appear normal instead of actually doing the brilliant work you hired them for. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Patricia Chen, the chief technology officer, spoke. My daughter is autistic. She's 12. I've spent years trying to prepare her for a workplace that won't accommodate her. Her voice was tight with emotion. I never thought about changing the workplace instead. If you believe workplaces should be designed for actual humans, not just corporate ideals, subscribe right now. We're about to see real change happen, and you don't want to miss this. The initiatives rolled out over the next 3 months. Jasmine worked with HR to create flexible workspace options, quiet rooms for people who needed sensory breaks, alternatives to open-plan seating, adjustable lighting. She developed training modules on neurodiversity for managers, teaching them to recognize different communication styles and work preferences as strengths rather than deficiencies. She consulted on interview processes, pointing out how traditional formats disadvantaged neurodivergent candidates. You're not assessing their ability to do the job, she explained to the recruiting team. You're assessing their ability to perform neurotypicality under pressure. Those aren't the same thing. Beverly became an unexpected ally. During one particularly contentious meeting where a department head argued that accommodations were coddling and unfair to neurotypical employees, Beverly cut him off with surgical precision. Mr. Harrison, Ms. Holloway has demonstrated that these accommodations improve outcomes for all employees, not just neurodivergent ones. Quiet spaces reduce stress. Flexible communication options improve clarity. Sensory-friendly lighting decreases headaches and eye strain. She looked at him coolly. Unless you're suggesting that suffering is somehow character building, I fail to see your objection. Jasmine caught Beverly's eye across the table and saw something she'd never expected: solidarity. 6 months into the corporate initiative, Jasmine stood in the renovated West Wing of Prescott Global Headquarters, a space she'd helped design with sensory-friendly lighting, acoustic panels, and flexible workstations. Employees who'd requested accommodations were thriving. Retention rates had improved. Productivity metrics were up. Graham joined her by the window overlooking the space. 2 years ago, you were cleaning the floors at Henderson's. Now you're reshaping corporate culture at a Fortune 500 company. Jasmine watched a software engineer work contentedly in a quiet pod, noise-canceling headphones on, finally able to focus without constant sensory bombardment. I'm doing the same thing I've always done, helping people understand that different doesn't mean deficient. You broke through the ceiling, Graham said quietly. The one that said someone like you, someone without credentials or corporate experience, couldn't possibly have anything valuable to teach people like us. He smiled. Turns out we were the ones who needed educating. If this story proves that real expertise comes from lived experience, not just degrees, share it with someone who needs to hear that their journey matters. Tag them in the comments. Let's lift each other up. The shift happened so gradually that neither of them noticed until it was already too late to pretend otherwise. It started with late-night conversations after Rowan went to sleep. Graham seeking Jasmine's perspective on everything from workplace policies to his own childhood. The way her laugh made something in his chest loosen. The way she challenged him without cruelty, pushed back without condescension, saw past his wealth and power to the uncertain father underneath. For Jasmine, it was watching Graham transform. The way he sat on the floor now, without self-consciousness. The way he'd learned to read Rowan's subtle cues, anticipating overwhelm before it became crisis. The vulnerability he showed when admitting he'd been wrong. The humility to learn from someone the world had dismissed as uneducated. One evening in late autumn, Graham found Jasmine in the library, curled in an armchair with a book on sensory integration therapy. Rain drummed against the windows, and she'd turned on only the small reading lamp, the room mostly dark and peaceful. "Rowan's asleep," Graham said, settling into the chair across from her. "He asked me to tell you good night. Said you'd understand why he couldn't come downstairs to say it himself." Jasmine smiled. He had a yellow day. Too much social input at school. He needed to decompress alone. "See, 2 years ago, I would have taken that personally, thought he was rejecting me." Graham shook his head. "You taught me that his need for space isn't about me at all." "You learned fast?" "I had a good teacher." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with something neither had acknowledged aloud. Graham's expression grew serious. "Jasmine, I need to tell you something, and I need you to know I've thought about this carefully. I've considered every implication, every complication, every reason this is a terrible idea." Jasmine set down her book slowly, her heart suddenly racing. "Graham, I'm in love with you." He said it simply, without drama, but his hands were shaking. "I don't know exactly when it happened. Maybe it was watching you transform Rowan's life. Maybe it was learning from you how to be a better father, a better person. Maybe it was realizing that you see me, not the CEO, not the billionaire, just me, and you're not impressed by any of it except the parts that actually matter." Jasmine couldn't breathe. "You're my employer." "I know. There's a massive power imbalance." "I know that too. The world will say I'm with you for your money, that I manipulated my way from cleaning floors to—" She stopped, unable to finish. "To what? To being exactly who you've always been?" Graham leaned forward. "Jasmine, you didn't ask for this position. I begged you to take it. You didn't pursue me. I'm pursuing you. And yes, there are professional boundaries we'd be crossing. Societal assumptions we'd be facing. People will absolutely say terrible things about your motivations." He paused, his voice dropping. "But I've spent 2 years watching you choose Rowan's well-being over everything else. Watching you work harder than anyone I've ever met. Watching you revolutionize my company's entire approach to accessibility and inclusion. You're the most principled person I know. If you feel even a fraction of what I feel, I don't care what anyone else thinks. If you believe love doesn't care about bank accounts or job titles, hit that like button. And if you're tired of people judging relationships they don't understand, comment, 'Love is love.' Let's drown out the haters." Jasmine stood, pacing to the window, her reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. Everything in her wanted to say yes. She'd been fighting her feelings for months, telling herself it was just gratitude, just professional admiration, just the intimacy of working closely with someone's child. But it wasn't just any of those things. It was love. Terrifying, complicated, completely inappropriate love. "Rowan's stability comes first," she said finally, not turning around. "Always. Not sometimes. Not usually. Always. I wouldn't have it any other way. If this affects him negatively, if he struggles with the change in our relationship, if it compromises the support system we've built," her voice cracked, "I won't sacrifice his well-being for us. I can't." Graham crossed the room to stand behind her, careful not to touch, giving her space. "That's exactly why I love you. Because you'd put my son first, even over your own happiness." Jasmine turned to face him, tears on her cheeks. "I'm terrified this will ruin everything. That Beverly was right to be skeptical, that I'm crossing lines I shouldn't cross." "Then we'll be terrified together," Graham said gently. "We'll move slowly. We'll be deliberate. We'll check in with Rowan constantly. And if at any point this becomes harmful to him, we stop. Full stop. No questions asked. She looked up at him, this man who'd offered her a job when she'd lost everything, who'd learned to be humble, who loved his son enough to completely transform himself, who saw her not as the help, not as the woman from the wrong side of every social divide, but as an equal. "Okay," Jasmine whispered. "Yes, but slowly, carefully, with Rowan's needs guiding every decision." Graham's smile was like sunrise. "I wouldn't dare suggest otherwise. You'd probably quit and take him with you." Despite everything, Jasmine laughed. "Damn right I would." He reached for her hand, and she let him take it, both of them standing in the dark library while rain fell outside and Rowan slept peacefully upstairs, safe in the sensory corner they'd built together. They dated for a year with the kind of intentionality that came from knowing how much was at stake. Graham never stayed overnight when Rowan was home. Jasmine kept her apartment, even though she rarely slept there. They told Rowan together, simply and honestly, that they cared about each other and wanted to spend more time together as a family. Rowan had considered this information carefully, then asked if it meant Jasmine would be at more dinners. When they said yes, he'd nodded and returned to organizing his cars, apparently satisfied. If you're emotionally invested in this family right now, turn on all notifications because what happens next will have you ugly crying. Don't say I didn't warn you. The proposal happened on a Sunday morning in Rowan's sensory corner. All three of them sitting on the crash pad surrounded by weighted blankets and fairy lights. Graham had asked Rowan's permission first, privately, explaining what marriage meant and checking whether the idea scared him. Rowan had said he'd been worried Jasmine might leave someday, so actually this sounded like a good plan. Graham held the ring box but didn't immediately open it. "Jasmine, 2 years ago you got fired for helping my son. You lost your job because you chose 3 minutes of compassion over policy compliance. You had every reason to walk away bitter, to decide that doing the right thing wasn't worth the cost." Rowan leaned against Jasmine's shoulder, listening seriously. "Instead, you agreed to work for a man you'd just met, in a world completely foreign to you, helping a child you barely knew. You could have taken the paycheck and done the bare minimum. Instead, you revolutionized how I parent, how my company operates, how I understand what it means to be human." Graham's voice caught. "You taught me that credentials mean nothing compared to character, that wealth means nothing compared to wisdom, that the greatest asset anyone can bring to a life isn't what's on their resume, it's what's in their heart." He opened the box. The ring was simple, elegant, a single stone that caught the soft light. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the gift of your presence?" Jasmine looked at Rowan, whose eyes were wide but calm. "What do you think, buddy? Should I say yes?" "Yes," Rowan said firmly. "Because then you'd be my mom. Officially." She was crying as she nodded. "Yes, God, yes. Comment, yes, if you're crying right now. And if you believe every child deserves someone who sees them, really sees them, share this story. Someone needs it today." The wedding was small, held in the Prescott Gardens on a temperate spring evening with only 20 guests. No grand ballroom, no society photographers, no pretense. Just the people who mattered most. When Graham stood to give his toast at the intimate reception, he looked at Jasmine with such naked love that several guests reached for tissues. Most people measure worth by wealth, credentials, social status. All the external markers society tells us define value. For most of my life, I believed that too. I hired the most credentialed experts, surrounded myself with people whose resumes proved their worth. Never questioned that the system that elevated me must be fundamentally sound. He paused, looking at Jasmine. Then I watched a woman in an orange cleaning uniform get fired for doing the right thing, for choosing a child's well-being over policy compliance, for having the courage to act when everyone else just stared. His voice grew thick with emotion. That woman had no credentials in child psychology, no degree in special education, no wealth or status or power. She had something infinitely more valuable: lived experience, instinctive compassion, and the moral courage to help someone in need regardless of the cost. Graham raised his glass. Jasmine didn't just save my son that day. She saved our entire family. She taught me that true worth isn't measured by what you own or what titles you hold. It's measured by the kindness in your heart, the courage of your convictions, and your willingness to love people exactly as they are. Rowan, sitting between them in his noise-canceling headphones with the volume off, smiled and raised his juice glass. To Jasmine, Graham concluded, who got fired for doing the right thing and changed our lives forever. I will spend every day grateful that you walked into that store and saw my son, really saw him, when everyone else looked away. If this story touched your heart, do 3 things right now. First, subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Second, share this with someone who needs to remember that doing the right thing always matters, even when it costs you everything. Third, comment below with the time you chose compassion over convenience. Let's fill this comment section with proof that good people still exist. And if you can't stand people who value rules over humanity, drop a "compassion always wins" down below. Let's show the Cynthia Albrights of the world that kindness will always triumph over cruelty.